everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Errol Lewis, a political anchor and the host of Inside City Hall on NY1. Errol, thanks so much for joining me.
Great to be with you.
I'm really grateful for the conversation today because you are someone who has covered Rudy Giuliani for decades, so I want to get your take on the latest news regarding the former New York City mayor. He recently received a pardon from President Trump over his actions trying to overturn the 2020 election results. And Rudy Giuliani is someone who has had this long legal career. He's someone who once served as U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, and because of his actions and his false statements while serving on Trump's legal team, trying to subvert the 2020 election results, he was ultimately disbarred. So to start off the conversation, what do you make of this news?
Well, look, the news is in some ways not surprising because he's been a close ally of Donald Trump for many, many years, and he certainly went to bat for him and arguably lost his law license over trying to defend Donald Trump. He's been disbarred now in D.C. and in New York. He really can't make a living at this point. He further got himself in legal hot water down in Georgia, which resulted in a $148 million defamation case and an attempt by Rudy Giuliani to declare bankruptcy. So he's really done quite a lot in service of Donald Trump's political ambitions. This, in some ways, symbolic pardon is really the least that he could have done in return.
I do want to talk about the symbolic nature of the presidential pardon because Rudy Giuliani, he settled multiple lawsuits over his false statements on the 2020 election results. But news just broke today that there's a new prosecutor in the Georgia case, the Georgia election interference case. Rudy Giuliani is a defendant on that RICO case. Since the presidential pardon, we know that only covers federal charges. These are state charges. So does that pardon do anything?
Well, you know, it's an interesting question. It's a good question. There's 77 people who were pardoned in this last round, many of them for their actions in trying to overturn the results of the 2020 election, which seems like a terrible thing. On the other hand, the legal trouble that they're in is basically at the state level for trying to produce false slates of electors, which violated state laws in some cases, or in the case of Rudy Giuliani, violated Georgia laws. And the federal pardon does nothing to help those people. It is a symbol. It's a very important symbol and a very disturbing one, frankly, because what it suggests is that this president and perhaps future presidents will allow people to try and tamper with federal elections, secure in the knowledge that if they're successful, a future president or perhaps this one will try and absolve them of their federal legal problems. It's a kind of a disturbing message and an important symbol for all of us to think about.
And Giuliani's spokesperson, after he received this pardon, he said something to the effect of that Rudy still stands by his post-2020 election work and that he wants his bar license reinstated ASAP. And we know that his long legal career has been disgraced since serving on President Trump's team. He's also in his 80s. Do you think Rudy Giuliani is ever going to practice law again?
I'd be very surprised if that happens, in part because there wouldn't necessarily be a long line of clients waiting for him, and in part because he's just kind of radioactive in a lot of ways. He still is making controversial statements. He got kicked off the radio show that he had based here in New York City, but then went on to continue doing sort of an online radio show where he takes calls and he talks with guests and he makes all kinds of inflammatory remarks that arguably could get him into even further sort of hot soup. And so it's not who you're looking for necessarily if you need somebody to help you out of a legal jam.